The laser. In Resident Evil, a group of elite soldiers invades the underground of the Umbrella Corporation to investigate the T-virus leak. What they didn't expect was that the real enemy wouldn't just be the infected, but also the artificial intelligence that controls the facility, the Hive. During the mission, the team gets trapped in a sealed hallway, and suddenly, the terror begins. Laser beams are projected from one end to the other, turning the corridor into a deadly high-tech trap. At first, the soldiers manage to dodge them, but each time the laser appears, it gets harder, creating impossible patterns. The most memorable moment comes when one of the members is caught head-on by the final beam. The deadly drive-thru. The Final Destination franchise is famous for turning small accidents into deadly traps, showing that death always finds a way to collect its debt. In the third movie, it's no different. Frankie Cheeks survives the initial roller coaster disaster along with Wendy and the others. He believes that since he escaped, he's finally safe. But in Final Destination, that sense of security never lasts long. The scene happens when Wendy and Kevin are stuck in their car at a drive-thru, unable to get out. The panic builds as a runaway truck heads straight toward them. And Frankie, who's in the car in front, doesn't move and just stays there, but he wouldn't have done that if he knew what was about to happen. The head. In Dead Snow, what was supposed to be a simple ski weekend for a group of friends turns into a real nightmare. The trip to the Norwegian mountains seemed perfect until they discovered the area hid a dark secret, a cursed Nazi treasure guarded by an army of zombies that should never have been awakened. In a desperate attempt to stay safe, the group hides in an isolated cabin, but the undead soon start forcing their way inside, surrounding every exit. And the zombies aren't just immortal, they also have brutal, inhuman strength. Among the group is Erland, the nerd, a horror movie fan, always cracking jokes about cliches, but no movie knowledge prepares him for real horror. As he tries to block one of the windows, he's suddenly attacked in a brutal way. Sliced in half. 13 Ghosts is a movie that mixes a haunted house, vengeful spirits, and lots of creative gore. The plot follows a family that inherits a mysterious mansion, only to find out it's actually a prison for 12 violent ghosts. Among the characters is Benjamin Moss, the lawyer handling the inheritance. Greedy and arrogant, he doesn't care about the family or the risks, only about the fortune hidden inside the house. But the mansion is filled with deadly traps. The glass walls move on their own, turning the place into a deadly maze. While exploring, he ends up stuck in a corridor, and without warning, a glass door slams shut at high speed. The impact is so fast and precise that his body is sliced in half. The camera lingers on the disturbing detail, the front half sliding slowly down the glass, while the back half stays standing for a few seconds. Splinter. Director Lucio Fulci became known as the godfather of gore in Italy, and Zombie 2 is probably the best example of that reputation. The movie follows a group traveling to a tropical island in search of answers about the rise of the undead. There they find pure nightmare, corpses rising from the ground, excessive blood, and uncensored violence. One of the victims is Paola Menard, the wife of the doctor trying to contain the epidemic. Alone at home during a zombie attack, she's cornered with no chance to escape. In a slow and agonizing sequence, we see her face getting closer and closer to a sharp splinter, until her eye is pierced. The director doesn't cut away before the impact, choosing instead to show everything raw and explicit. The Sledgehammer. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre not only defined the slasher genre, but also delivered one of the most shocking scenes in horror cinema. The movie follows a group of young people who, while visiting an isolated Texas farmhouse, stumble into the territory of a cannibal family led by the monstrous Leatherface. Among them is Kirk, who separates from the group and enters what looks like an abandoned house in search of gas. But what seems like just an old rural home quickly becomes a nightmare. Without warning, Leatherface strikes Kirk with a sledgehammer. The young man's body collapses, convulsing on the ground, and before the audience can even react, he's dragged into the room. The Merman. The cabin in the woods breaks down every horror cliche by revealing that behind the terrors is a secret facility, manipulating young people in bloody rituals to appease ancient entities. In the film's finale, chaos is unleashed. Every monster, creature, and abomination locked inside escapes, turning the facility into a massacre. Among the victims is Steve Hadley, one of the facility's technicians. During the attack, he keeps fighting, firing at the swarm of monsters, until an explosion throws him to the ground. Exhausted, he thinks he might make it out alive, but fate had other plans. From the fog, the very creature he'd been waiting to see the entire movie finally appears, the Merman. With no time to react, Hadley faces the monster and delivers his last words.
Oh, come on.
The Defibrillator. In The Thing, John Carpenter created one of the greatest sci-fi horror classics ever, where an alien creature capable of imitating any living being infiltrates a base in Antarctica. The tension builds because you never know who's still human and who's already been taken over. At the peak of the paranoia, Norris, one of the crew members, collapses, apparently from cardiac arrest. Amid the chaos, the base's doctor, Dr. Copper, rushes to save him. But the moment he presses the defibrillator, Norris's body reveals its true form. The scene doesn't just shock because of the violence, but because it drives home the film's central theme. The creature could be anyone, just waiting for the right moment to strike. The Yoga Girl. In a Violent Nature stood out for bringing a different perspective to the slasher genre. Most of the story is shown through the eyes of the killer himself, Johnny, as he wanders the forest hunting for victims. Among the group of young people who invade his territory is Aurora, nicknamed by fans as Yoga Girl. She separates from the others to meditate alone, but that moment of peace quickly turns into one of the most brutal deaths in the film. In seconds, Johnny drives a hook through her stomach and lodges it into her head. Then, with no remorse, he starts pulling on the chain attached to the hook, twisting her body. The camera doesn't look away. We see every disturbing detail up close. The mirror curse. For years, Kaylee and Tim lived haunted by the Lasser glass mirror, which they blamed for the death of their parents. In the present day, the two return to their old house to prove that the object really is cursed and to destroy it once and for all. Obsessed, Kaylee sets up traps and even rigs a guillotine to a timer to smash the mirror if something goes wrong. But as the night goes on, it gets harder and harder to tell reality from illusion. Exhausted, Kaylee believes she's hugging her mother, like a late reconciliation. But the scene is just another trick of the mirror. In reality, she's approaching the mechanism set up to destroy the Lasser glass. That's when Tim, convinced he's saving his sister, releases the rope. The blade slices through Kaylee's neck in an instant, killing her on the spot. The Gymnast. In Final Destination 5, we get one of the most creative deaths in the entire franchise. Candace, a young gymnast, is training when a series of malfunctions start turning the gym into a lethal trap. A loose bar, a screw in the wrong place, unstable equipment, everything combines into the suffocating atmosphere typical of the saga. During her routine, Candace launches into a sequence of flips, but one of her teammates steps on a nail and stumbles into a bucket of chalk powder. That distraction throws Candace off balance and she loses control, and then... The Jealous Father. City of the Living Dead is another Lucio Fulci movie that delivers one of the most visceral zombie moments ever made. The story follows a series of apocalyptic events after a priest commits suicide in a cemetery, literally opening the gates of hell. Among all the brutal scenes, one of the most disturbing doesn't even directly involve a zombie, but instead fanaticism and human violence. Bob, a lonely young man already mistrusted by the community, is caught by Mr. Ross near his daughter. Consumed by irrational fury, Ross believes the boy is a threat, and his paranoia only grows in the apocalyptic climate that's already overtaking the city. Without hesitation, he shoves the boy into a drill which bores straight through his skull and brain. It's a raw, uncomfortable scene. Ironically, here the biggest monster isn't the zombie, but the so-called protective father. Microwave Head. The remake of The Last House on the Left brought back the brutality of Wes Craven's original, but added even more graphic and creative deaths. One of them became the film's signature, the infamous Microwave Head. After a night of terror, the criminals who destroyed young Marie's life end up facing her parents' revenge. John Collingwood, her father, goes way beyond any limit when he decides to take out Krug, the gang's leader. With cold precision, he restrains Krug and positions his head inside a microwave oven. Without any rush, John turns it on and watches. The familiar, almost ordinary sound of the microwave contrasts with the horror of what's happening. Slowly, Krug's skull starts to bubble, his eyes twist, and finally, his head explodes. The Possessed Dog. The film When Evil Lurks delivers raw, unpredictable horror where a small rural community faces the presence of the possessed, people taken over by a demonic entity that spreads like an infection. Among the most brutal moments is the family dog scene, which catches the audience completely off guard. What makes it so disturbing isn't just the violence, but how it breaks the sense of safety. A dog, usually seen as the family protector, becomes an agent of evil, showing that in this world, no one is safe. The Bus. The movie's story begins in the 1960s. Twin brothers Hal and Bill, still children, find what looks like a harmless toy in their family's attic, a wind-up monkey that bangs metal cymbals. But they soon realize the toy is anything but harmless. Every time the monkey claps its cymbals, someone dies in a strange and brutal way. The brothers learn that they can't just ignore the toy. It's like it's part of the family, something that can't be thrown away without consequences. In the present day, we see the weight of all those accumulated deaths and how the monkey keeps interfering with their lives. Then comes one of the film's strongest transitions. One of the characters tries to finally get rid of the toy, putting it in a car to take it away. But in the post-credit scene, we see just how unpredictable this monkey really is. The kids were just celebrating when they got hit. Nobody saw that death coming. The final smile. In Smile, Dr. Rose Cotter faces a case that seems unexplainable. Laura, a young patient, claims she's being stalked by an invisible entity that takes the form of people with terrifying, twisted smiles. What first looks like a simple psychological breakdown soon turns into something much darker. Laura had just witnessed her professor's grotesque suicide. Since then, she said the entity was following her everywhere. With nowhere else to turn, she went to the hospital for help, but her meeting with Rose only became the start of a new cycle of horror. During the session, Laura panics and begs Rose to believe her. But before any help can come, the evil force takes over. Laura freezes, lifts a broken piece of glass, and with a horrifying grin across her face, slashes her own throat right in front of Rose. The deadly chair. In Gremlins, the Christmas spirit of a small American town gets turned upside down when an innocent holiday gift, the little creature Gizmo, spawns an army of mischievous and chaotic monsters. What begins as a Christmas comedy quickly turns into a festival of destruction. Among the townspeople is the dreaded Mrs. Deagle, an arrogant woman who treats her neighbors, and even animals, with total disdain. During the Gremlins invasion, they decide to have some fun at her expense, sabotaging her motorized chairlift, the only way she could get up and down the stairs at home. When she sits down, thinking it's just another normal ride, the chair shoots up the stairs at insane speed, turning them into a roller coaster. At the end of the ride, the chair blasts out the window, launching Mrs. Deagle straight to her death. So, do you know any other bizarre deaths that didn't make it into this video? If you do, drop them in the comments. On screen right now, there's a video about horror movies where nobody survives. Click and check it out. I'll see you there.